we go. Here we go. Yeah. Taryn Turner.
What up, what up, what up, what up, what up?
What up? How are things?
Going well. How's it going
Awesome.
today?
Going good. I'm in a hotel room, if you can't tell.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I have cool wallpaper like this on my house at home too, but I found a hotel that actually has the same wallpaper. You would never even think of it.
Wow. I hate it when that happens to my wall
Oh
art.
man, it's the best when it happens. Anyway, hey, welcome everybody to the Ops Experts Masterclass, Foundations That Scale, with your hosts, Aaron Hovivian and the masterful Taryn Turner. Taryn, can I just say this? I love that on the opt-in page, on the landing page, that I got to use your code name. Not everybody gets a code name in this industry, and not everybody can word as well as you do, but I think we should actually, if you could change your name for me on your Zoom monitor just to be T Money, just in light of how you're known in this industry. What do you think about
Just for today, let's do it.
that?
Money.
T Money. Anyway, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Taryn and I are here this morning. We're also going to have our amazing Savannah joining us at some point. So I just want to set the tone. So those of you who are attending today, let me explain who it's for and who it's probably not. So if it's not for you, you can just bail out, or if it is for you, you can lean in, because I think it's really important to identify who we're talking to today. And the people we're talking to today are people who are built for operations. And let me explain, let me give you a little story example. I just got off a call. Collab team gets a lot of these kinds of calls. New client perspective. And the guy is just amped, so much energy, so much, has so much vision. I want to do this and I want to do this. And then, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, I want to do this and I want to do this. And it's like so much new. And as I'm talking to him and I'm pulling apart, I'm like, okay, so how much is built out right now? I mean, like, how much infrastructure have you laid for the sake of like fulfilling on all this new? So do you have landing pages built? Do you have, opt-in funnels and pages and links back to your CRM so we can track these people as they come in? Do you have any kind of fulfillment sequences, emails going out on the backside? Do you have anything that's unlocking membership areas as they purchase? Do you have any of that kind of thing built? No, man, that's easy stuff though. That's not going to take any amount of time for us to build. And that's exactly how it goes. So if you're listening this morning, if you're hanging out this morning, whether you're tuning in and you're watching everything that I show you, or Taryn's going to talk about, or Savannah's going to talk about over the next couple of days, the people I want to lean in is the people that feel that pain on a daily basis, where your visionary calls you or gets on a Zoom call with you or reaches out to you and they're like, you're going to be so excited about this, right? Because they're so excited about it, right? They're going to be so excited about this new thing I've got. And all you feel is dread begin to sink into your stomach, because you're like, oh my gosh, you just called me yesterday and I was so full of dread already. Morning, Savannah. Good to see you this morning, lady. If that's you, if you get those calls from visionaries on a daily basis, if your Voxer channel is blowing up and you're like, dear God, I can't possibly even catch up with 15 boxes right now. If you're that person that's like, you hear the word new and you start to sink because you're like, I don't want to let my face show the visionary that I'm not as excited as he is, but I'm not as excited as he is because I know we haven't fully built out the last 5 things they told me were new. If that's you, those are the people I'm talking to this morning. If you're a visionary, you're going to hear all those things that I just said, and you're probably going to, number one, get pissed at me out of the gates because you're already pissed at your operations person that's pushing back on you. But this is like, it's kind of like cheers for ops folks, right? Like it's kind of like come sit down at the bar and let's commiserate a little bit about how you're feeling, and then let's give you some solutions. Taryn, what would you say about that? Do you feel like that's a fair summary?
Yeah, it's a pretty fair summary. I like what you said about, all these things they think are really easy to implement, and that's going to take no time at all. But really, it's like we're designing a house, and the visionary, he's on the second level, and we haven't even built the foundations yet. And really, we need to build those foundations before you can start building the house. But at the same time, you really need to know how the house needs to be built so you have foundations that will support the whole house. Otherwise, you build them too small, too weak, and they'll just crumble. If your house, your visionary was dreaming something bigger and didn't tell everybody else. So that's what we're bringing to you here, is really, how do we create those foundations that can support your visionary's big ideas?
That's good. Taryn, thank you for recentering me. Foundations that scale is exactly that. We're going to give you the foundation stones so that you can scale with your visionary to the moon understanding that your foundations can support it. Like skyscrapers fall when foundations aren't strong enough to bear it. That's the bottom line. So if you haven't set a solid foundation, it's really hard to grow the way that your visionary wants to grow. Savannah, Amelia is like the cutest baby in the world, and I'm so glad that she is learning operations and foundations that scale from the beginning. Look how happy she is about it. She's like, yes, I cannot wait. Savannah, I know you feel a lot of that pain too. Even your specialty is people and customer support, and you're going to talk about that a little bit later this week. But do you want to say anything along those lines, just as we kick off this entry to foundations at scale?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of what you guys said. If you guys don't, if the foundation is not first laid, especially you see it with your people, because you're going to break your people really fast if you don't have processes that make their lives easier. If you don't have enough people in place to make sure that when things scale quickly, everyone's set up for success. Things topple hard. So you don't want to burn out your team. And
definitely see people break before tech breaks.
And that's the truth, right? Is that for anybody that's leading a team, and the thing that always makes my heart hurt a little bit for visionaries is I don't think that visionaries are bad people. Like, in all honesty, they're the shakers and the movers. They're the ones that are making things happen on planet Earth. The problem is that when you don't have infrastructure that can bear all their new vision, then they get frustrated. Then there becomes friction. Then there's a bad energy in the team, and then that escalates, right? Because depending on the ops people you have in play, it can really poison the whole group, depending on how that energy is perceived and how that energy is pushed out. So I think everything that Savannah just said is really, really true from technology. And Taryn's going to talk about technology, your tech stack, the things that you need to have in place for the sake of bearing the load. Savannah's going to talk about customer experience, what you need to have in place for your customer experience team to bear the load. And then I'm going to talk to you about team in general. Like, how do you know how many team you need, how much team you need? When is it time to grow? When is it time to expand your bandwidth? Because there's a lot of teams that are trying to run lean, but they're going to burn their people out. And the worst thing you could do is run so lean that you burn people out, because then if you lose a key player and you only have a few players on the field, then you're in a real situation, right? Because especially if there hasn't been a transference of information. I talked to a guy earlier this week, has an amazing business selling products, physical products actually, and a little bit different than some of the info space that we do for most online entrepreneurs, but losing his key person, right? His key person that is the key holder of all this information. Most visionaries, they find somebody and they're like, thank God, and they like just dump everything on that person. Well, the danger of that is if you lose that person before you extract that information back out of them, usually a visionary starts them down here, and anybody that's operationally based expands it out. And if that person exits with that information only in their mind, it's a huge setback for the brand. It's a huge, and things that the visionary tends to minimize because they're not his or her wheelhouse actually becomes so loud and painful, because you lose the processes, you lose the SOPs around those processes, you lose key pieces of information that only they knew, logins that only they had, things that you just take for granted, right? It's all the take for granted that as they exit, you really begin to feel. So we're going to talk today about ways that you can set up yourself for success. But the analogy I always give is, my daughter moved to Arizona last year, and Arizona is a place that has flash floods, right? And the reason they have flash floods is because it bakes like a freaking sauna so much of the year, 126 degrees in the summer, the ground becomes so hard. But then when the storms do come in, these big, clappers, these big thunderstorms come in and dump all this water, the ground can only drink so much because it's so hard. So it flash floods and it pushes it all into the streets of Phoenix, or, whatever part of Arizona you're in. My daughter lives in Phoenix. So it pushes all in the streets of Phoenix. If they didn't have a good infrastructure with their sewer department, if they didn't have a good way to get that water off the streets, the streets would become undrivable. So all we're going to do today, and for the next 3 days in succession for 1 hour, is talk you through how do we create the infrastructure that when the water hits the streets, all of it knows where to go. As your visionary comes and dumps the deluge of new vision on you, if you have the right pieces in place, it's great. It all goes the way it's supposed to go. Oh, no problem. Oh, that's what you want to do today? Oh, no problem. Yeah, that takes this automation. Taryn, can you handle this? And make sure you plug in all the SOPs he's got. Savannah, we've got a new initiative coming out. Will you make sure the CE team, this customer experience team, knows in chat, here's their one sheet. This is what's going to go towards, and this is how we're going to triage it. This is how fulfillment's going to happen. Go back to the rest of the team and say, hey, team that's on deck, I need you to build build out these assets. I need you to place them in these places. I need you to start up this new membership area. I need to have all this to happen so that when we go live for whatever it is, a launch or a challenge or a masterclass or just a new product to market, we don't start feeling the pain point of we're not showing up the way that we said we would, because usually most visionaries can sell. That's not the problem. The problem is fulfillment, but they minimize fulfillment because they're like, we provide so much value. And that may be true, but if it's not being delivered in the right way, the analogy I often give is if I come on to a car lot and I'm expecting to walk away with a Porsche Carrera and you give me a Corvette's cool. And I like Corvettes, but I had in my mind, I was going to walk out of here with a Carrera, you know what I mean? So it's a shift in brain space and people don't like that. I provide so much value. Both those cars are very, very valuable. But if I came on the lot expecting one thing because you sold me on this and you try and give me the keys for this other car that's equally of value, I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going to tell you you didn't show up the way you told me you were going to. And that's what we as operations people are trying to stop is, hey, how can we just, as the deluge of new comes down, we're going to have foundations that scale, that can scale this thing up by pushing the water where it needs to go as we hit the flood of new. So today I'm going to talk about team. 3 things we're going to talk about today, tomorrow, and the next day is team, tech, and then customer experience journey. And we're going to talk about how you manage each one of those things. The reason we're starting with team today is I feel like a lot of visionaries start in that place of maybe they start with an EA, they start with an operations-based person, and then that operations person starts getting overwhelmed and they start wondering, okay, so where do I go from here? How do I know who to hire next? And I think that that's something we've seen over and over again, working with Pedro Adeo, working with Pete Vargas at Advance Your Reach, working for Keith Yackey, working with Steve Harwood at Prime, working with Pace Morby's team, all these different folks that we've got to work with through the years. We've got to see over and over the pain point of people, pain point of time, pain point of how am I managing my people? So, and I will say this too, for those of you who are operations based, I think it's important that we realize operations is just the engine that supports sales. Like and some people in visionaries' minds, I think they can think operations is a money suck. It's like, how much do we actually need? I'm not making any money off those people. But if we could realize that tech is actually the way, your automations are the way you maximize your sales. And Taryn's going to talk about that tomorrow. If we can see that our CE department is the way that we manage like our sales that are coming through, right? Because we want to be able to do that. If we can see that our people and our team are the way that we're monitoring our sales, the way that we're actually fulfilling on what we said we would do, I think each one of those things are key to realize. You can't separate sales from operations because sales is only selling something that operations is fulfilling. It's all one package. So how can we make operations lean so we have the best profitability? And that's what we're going to talk about today with team. All right, guys, anything to add to that before I share my screen? Savannah, you missed the coolest tunes that Jesh created for us.
So
yeah. Good.
I was jamming. I think one thing I'd add is just that, once you get those right people in the right seats too, and you get those downloads from the visionary to the ops people, the ops person gives it to your team. Your team knows what to do from there. Your marketing manager knows what it means when they want to go in a new direction. Your tech manager knows what it means. Your sales manager knows what it means. So really dialing in your people is really greasing up those operational gears for everybody.
Yep. I always talk to people about that too. When I'm selling the visionary on the concept, it's like, hey, listen, I'm sure your people are running amazingly, but if you grease those gears, all it's going to do is cause things to spin faster and better and churn at a better productivity. And that's what Collab team does, is let us come in and help grease the gears. Let us help work with your people and make them even more of a badass than they are currently. Savannah, can you hear this if I play it? Like, let's share my sound. Gonna get groovy. Watch this. You ready? Anyway, you'll get to see that tomorrow, Savannah. I just wanted to show you because Jesh did a great job creating that. So we use Asana as a project management tool. And I'm just going to walk you through. This is our gap to job description template that walks you through kind of the modality of how we determine team. And so I just kind of want to show you an overview. we start with the gap analyzer, we move to a delegate and elevate, and then that fleshes out to a job description that we typically go out to hire for or implement with team. So I'm going to show you what each one of those tools means and kind of how it works, especially when it determines, how do I know that my team is at max bandwidth? How do I know that my team is working on what I want them to be working on, right? That's another thing that visionaries struggle with a lot is, what do you mean you're overwhelmed? Like, what in the world are you doing with all your time? Because once again, remember, it's a mindset shift. A visionary doesn't work on the things that ops people do. And equally so, ops people don't work on things visionaries do. So there can be a real loss of translation. And if you can make that into something numeric, if you can make that something into something metric, it really helps everybody. Hey, let's just give somebody a real big visual. So Taryn and I started with something some years back. And actually, Taryn, I think you might have been, no, Pete Vargas's team was my first, but you came pretty close after it when you were leaving Roasters Coffee. As we were pulling you out of Roasters, we were pulling you into some things new. I actually took you through this gap analyzer tool, this gap analysis tool that I had created. And you were one of the first veterans after Pete's team that I actually took you through and showed Wes Hayden at the time, the owner of Roasters, where your time was. But this tool started like this. So this is a great place, I think, for you to start. If you didn't get this tool, it's a free gift to be part of Foundations That Scale. If you just go to foundationsthatscale.com and opt in there. Not all of you opted in. If you're watching this on Facebook, if you're watching this on YouTube, wherever you're seeing this, if you're seeing it inside the Ops Experts Club group, maybe not all of you opted in. You're just showing up because you see a live has popped up. That's great. We love having you here. Go get the free tool, foundationsthatscale.com. You can download the free tool there. This is the free tool. And essentially what it is the conversation about time. How is your team, whoever this is, employee number one, how are they spending their time on the daily? How are they spending their time on the weekly? How are they spending their time on the monthly? And then it rolls it all up into total hours worked and an average hour per day. The other beauty of this tool is as they're allocating hours, they're also allocating what category of business it is. These are the four categories that we see most often used in businesses: marketing, operations, customer experience, and sales. The way this tool works is you just push it out to your employees, have them fill out their section and their hours, and then it begins to be a conversation piece. Sometimes people get stuck in this and they're like, well, it's really hard to know what I do every single day. I don't know how to fill this out. Like, you're overthinking it. Go back to your calendar, go back to your workload. It should only take 15 or 20 minutes. Populate this document, because this becomes a starting point. This isn't meant to be some super metric. Oh, I think I use actually 15 minutes less on this than I put down on the document. No, that's not what this is about. This is about, let's have a conversation about how much time things are taking you. We had a L10 meeting yesterday that Taryn and I were on. We lean into EOS, Entrepreneur's Operating System, the book Traction by Gino Wickman. We feel like that's a really good tool for just an operating system, a communication base for your company. We roll that out with all of our clients. But we were on an L10 meeting, which is EOS's version of a team weekly meeting. And the disparaging was so high, Taryn. I don't know if you caught it on that meeting, but we had this one gal that's like, this thing that this guy has me leading all of this, it's taking all of my time it's taking almost all of my bandwidth. And the COO that was on the call was like, that's crazy, because the visionary told me that shouldn't be taking you more than any more than an hour or two a week. And so you can see the disparaging of conversation. Like, visionary thinks, what the heck is that lady doing with all her time? It should be only taking an hour or two. This lady's like, oh my gosh, we don't have any efficiencies in place. Nothing's been built out. Everything is hyper manual. So all the communication is manual, and all the fulfillment is manual, and all the tangles that people get into because it's not automated is manual. And so it's just gobbling up all my time, and it's in communication. Something like this would be a way that we can see that. Like, how much time is customer service taking you on a daily basis? If you're doing live events, how much time is that taken on a weekly basis? So whatever that is, however it works, you can break it down by your employees. And then the summary sheet kind of rolls it up in one spot where you can see, how much workflow is being allocated to the 4 areas of business by each one of your employees. That's the free tool. Over time, after running this for a lot of years, actually, the Collab team has been around for 9 years now. We ran this probably for the first 7, I would say. And then we developed out a tool a couple of years ago called the Gap Analyzer. The Gap Analyzer actually puts all these things. Sometimes the hard part about sheets, right, is that you may not want to send you might not want to send this to everyone, have everybody see how everybody else is filling it out. You might want it just to be uniquely theirs, because if they have a complaint about somebody else on the team, that might not be the best thing for everybody to see, but you're going to want to see it. So the sheets aren't ideal always. It's a great starting spot. It's free. It's my free gift to you. Use it. I used it for 6 or 7 years running the Collab team. It's beautiful. Oftentimes I would send out one sheet at a time to employees, and then I would bring the whole thing back together as a master document to send back to whoever's making decisions. Use this tool. If you upgrade to VIP, the VIP was $37, and I'm going to give you the Gap Analyzer tool for free. This is usually, if you go to gapanalyzer.com, costs $297. I'm going to give it to you for free for $37 and join us for VIP. We're doing VIP at 1 p.m. today, Pacific. Give you a little bit of break in the day, treat it like your lunch. Come back and ask specific questions on, Aaron, how do I grow team? How do I know what comes next? How do I take pressure off of my team? Like all those things we would love to make VIP very personable. If you want to join us, $37, and I'll give you the Gap Analyzer for free. But let's look at the Gap Analyzer for now, because I think that Gap Analyzer really helps us to see it in a more succinct place. So what we did with the Gap Analyzer tool is, the beauty of this one is it shows you each one of these people, but you can click on any of the names. And it's the same concept, is let's have a conversation about time with Taryn. Time with Taryn. Can I just say, I love time with Taryn. Taryn, thank you for your time.
Yeah, okay.
So Taryn fills this out on the daily, how many hours, the 4 areas of business. It gives you the pie chart for his daily stuff. Then Taryn fills it out on his weekly tasks. Look at when you fill this out, Taryn. Like, we've seen a lot of things through our years. Weekly tasks, and then how that breaks out across his spread that way. And then monthly tasks, things that he's doing on a monthly basis, and the spread of his time there. And then at the bottom of the sheet, it's going to give you, as you're going through, how many hours he's working daily on his daily tasks, how many hours he's working on his weekly tasks per day, broken out in a daily session, hours daily. And then total hours monthly, broken out into the days. And then the tool is smart enough that it summarizes the whole thing for you. Hours per week worked, total hours per day worked. I wish that was still the case, Darren. That is just not. That's a piece of fiction right there. But anyway, at the very bottom of the tool, you also give them an opportunity to list out, hey, what's the greatest inefficiency in your role? And what's the largest pain point you feel like is happening on our team? And then what would be the biggest win that you would see as moving the company forward? The beauty of collecting that kind of information from all of your people is that you get a roll up like this, and then the main dashboard screen gives you it. So here's Taryn's 3 things, greatest inefficiency, largest pain point, biggest win. This is the weekly distribution of hours, how Taryn's hours sit. And you have that for every single person on the team. As you slide down, it walks you through how everybody has answered the question. It's one succinct spot, takes about 15 to 20 minutes to fill out. And in one glance, you now have a team concept of time. And you can start identifying things like, do I want my team to be spending 55%, 56% of their time on operations? You can see the gaps. Clearly, we need to spend more time with the Collab team on sales. 5% of all team time comprehensively is given to sales. And you can work your way through. The cool thing about the tool as well is you can click in on operations and see exactly the spread on how many hours are going where. And I can say, do I want Savannah working 38 hours on operations-based stuff? Savannah's lean is customer experience. I would want Savannah leaning that way. And so I can click in on Savannah and I can see, oh, wait a minute, what is she doing in the operations in the day-to-day? What's this represented by? And I can go down and it gives me a conversation piece to have with Savannah on how Savannah is using time. So the Gap Analyzer tool is a huge upgrade. The sheets are badass. They worked for us for years. Highly recommend them. It's free. If you don't want to spend anything, man, take it. I would love to give you it as a gift. Foundations that scale, grab it there. If you join the VIP today, I'll give you the Gap Analyzer. We just did 2 gaps last week for 2 amazing teams. And I feel like the results that we bring back for people with the Gap, you can take the Gap Analyzer. And then if you want our team to do interviews, usually I would say, if you take this tool with VIP and you roll it out on your own, do interviews with team members to make sure you're clear on how they answered, why they answered the way they did. Pick out some points on why they feel the ways they do about certain things. And then from there, you can create kind of a summary. That's what we do. You can buy a project block with Collab team, and we'll take your team through a Gap Analyzer. But we just did a couple last week, and the things we brought back in the summaries were, I feel like, so revelatory for the visionaries because they don't see time like this. The bottom line is, Our visionaries don't see time like we do. Like if you're an operations-based person, your calendar might look something like this. Here's my calendar. You know what I mean? And you're just like, you're stuffing things in, you're organizing things up, and everything that you do is fairly organized, you know, but that's not how visionary lives. And if visionary tried to live how we as operations people live, they would lose their mind. Like they're not wired like that. And we shouldn't try and make them to be wired like that. But we need to organize our time, and we need to know what's the best areas I can begin to strip things out of my time. And that's going to lead into what I talk about next. But let's talk about Gap a little bit here. Savannah, Taryn, T-Money, I love that you changed your name for me. Thank you for that. Any things you want to add to the Gap Analyzer process, the Gap analysis process, things you think that I might have missed or would be good to cover here today?
I think having gone through it myself, it's just a fun way to look at the different things you're working on in a different viewpoint. Because a lot of times we're just filling out timesheets. We just see clock in, clock out. You know, we're not really paying attention to the different modals of business that we are actually working in. So it's a really good way to kind of see that, even as you have people going through it themselves, they also get some value out of it too. It's not just for whoever's making them do it.
Yeah, I love that. Savannah, do you have any thoughts you want to add? Oh, Amelia's sad. It's okay if she's too sad. Amelia does like the Gap. She just doesn't want to talk about it today. But I will say, I can probably speak for Savannah. Savannah and I talk a lot. So I would say when it comes to your customer experience team, it's really important to know what's slowing them down. We had a whole conversation yesterday on an L10 about Discord and about, hey, how are we using Discord and how are we interacting with people on Discord, and are there better ways to do it? You know, I know Pedro Adeo, there was a shift that happened a few years ago where Pedro was like, we can't keep up with email. Email cannot be the way we do this anymore. There are too many emails. There's too much coming in, even though we had a pretty deep team, a pretty deep bench strength of customer experience people, too much email because it's so easy for me, to hit reply and fall and type out my next thought, right? They start by asking, hey, I didn't get my tickets for the free event that's coming up. Pedro's got a 100X event coming up, a conference coming up this next week that's going to be fire. Show up for it. It's going to be so good, happening live in Orange County, but also they're going to be doing it virtual too. You can go check it out. Pedro Adeo's 100X conference. But let's say they started out by saying, hey, I didn't get my ticket for the 100X conference. Savannah from customer experience emails back and says, oh, no problem. Here's the link. It'll take you straight there. Then they have the choice, right, of saying thank you, which would be the polite thing to do. But all of us are like, hey, actually, I never actually got that other thing that I was supposed to get from that one time 2 years ago. Is there any way you go look into that for me? And then Pandora starts, right? Then it's like 15 back and forth emails about something that started so simple as an event ticket. And now there's 15 new issues. And Savannah's got to reach out to the affiliate department about, was there affiliate payment paid out, and reach out to the automations department to see if they had gotten a certain membership they were supposed to have gotten as a bonus from this thing that Pedro had thrown in last minute 2 years ago. Like it can turn into Pandora. So Pedro had the great idea, and I thought it was a brilliant idea of, let's move to chat. Let's move away from email. Let's move away from inbox centric way of handling customer experience to chat. And they moved to chat and then move from there. And now it's like bots into chat that then can be escalated to a ticket. That kind of infrastructure is beautiful, especially when you have something like a Discord problem where you're trying to triage in a closed environment group that really should be customer experience. What's the go-to SOP on when we hit this kind of a conversation, push them hard at, askpedro.com. And at askpedro.com, it wasn't Pedro's situation, wasn't Discord, but in that scenario, we created for Pedro a landing page that when they get to the landing page, they can self-serve with FAQ, and then the bot pops up. And we worked with Black Belt Bots. Is that the name of it?
RJ.
RJ is the best. If you're looking for bots, she's great at creating bots. Black Belt Bots helped us with creating bots and putting that on the page first to triage then into the chat that was managed by Zendesk and then escalate up. So there's some cool things you can do, but that's just one example of, we wouldn't know how much time Discord was taking for that person unless they documented it in a tool like this and told us, hey, our customer experience hours, I'm burying 17 hours in customer experience. How are you burying it there? Oh, it's because I've been living in Discord. Oh, wait a minute. Well, let's set up something, an automation. You'll hear Taryn talk about it tomorrow. How can we set up an automation that could actually help with the lift so that we can drop people's hours and offset that to robots taking over the world, just like Terminator warned us, just like Arnold Schwarzenegger said, be careful, the robots are taking over. How can we give robots the ability to take over some of the lift and bang down hours and give Savannah the gift of some hours back to her again? Like that's the whole purpose. Anything else, T, on this before we move on?
I think too, it's just fun to look at like the 80-20 rule, the classic 80-20 rule. It's like we might not be able to get 100%, but 80% of the tickets, that frees up a lot of time. We might still have 20% tickets coming through, but those 80% of tickets were probably taking, the most time.
100%. And I think Savannah's going to talk about, and Savannah's so gifted at this, but she's going to talk about macros on Saturday on day 3, and talk about the ability to clear cut the forest with macros, right? Like if you've got 80 inbox messages all answering a very similar thing, it's such a dream inside of Zendesk to be able to like deploy a macro and hit all 80 people with the same message. And then for most of them, that's going to tie it off. If they've got more conversation around that, that's great, but it's assigned back to a ticket and we can triage through a lesser amount of volume by just simple automations. So Taryn's going to share the magic of automations tomorrow. Savannah's going to share the magic of how you use those in a customer experience environment on Saturday. It's going to be pretty masterful. I'm pretty excited about it. Savannah, now Amelia's down. Do you have anything else you want to say, or she's still not happy?
She's eating bananas in the corner, so I have a moment.
Yes, bananas in the corner are the best.
But on just a note on the 2 differences between like the 2 gap analyzers that you use, because everyone who just opted into the free challenge gets the Sheets version. And I just had a thought as we were looking at that several minutes ago while my baby was crying in my ear. It's one of those things that like beginner operation things, like if you're just jumping into it, like things like that, like look super intimidating. It always looks scarier than it is. But then once you start filling it out, like let the calculations and stuff do the work for you. It's actually not that scary. And then kind of same thing with the gap analyzer. Once you upgrade into VIP and you're looking at this, like very simple for the team to get through. And it's one of those things like goodness, like $37 is not very much for this tool. But even if you're not going to have the Collab team look at it for you, like kind of like addiction, like knowing that you have a problem is the first step to solving the problem. Yep. So it's just so invaluable to have this insider look under the hood to what your team is doing and how the time is spent. And like, I feel like you can like get answers to like burnout questions, like immediately just by having your team fill out this simple thing. So
it really is. Cause I think too, the bigger your team gets, I know we talked about, how do I know how to expand my team? Well, put somebody through it, put the first couple of people you've got on your team through it, see where their time is being allocated, what's taken the amount of time most. Ask yourself, could tech relieve that? And if not, then you have a really good way of knowing, what do I need to go to market for? I think that's the beauty, and that's what we're going to talk about next, is once you've had everybody suss out exactly what it is they do with their days, then what you can do is, this is a tool that EOS uses called the Delegate Elevate. And it's a great tool for doing exactly that. So EOS very much believes in the 80-20 rule, just like what Taryn advocated for back there, is how can we keep people at 80% in their brilliance? And how can we keep them out of things that they're not operating in their greatest brilliance, right? Because you want to get the most bang for your buck from your team. That's visionary speak right there, right? They're like, I'm spending so much money on team. Like, how can I get that to come down? Well, the easiest way to do that is make sure that all of your team is operating in their highest brilliance so that their greatest efficiency is actually being realized, and then begin to strip off of them the things that they've just kind of become a collector. Anybody that started a business, anybody that's in a fast upshoot, that hockey stick experience of growth, it's kind of just WIT, right? Whatever it takes. Like, I don't care about job descriptions. I don't care about roles and responsibilities. Just get the shiz done. Like that's visionary speak, right? So, and I get it, but that's not a sustainable business model. Getting shiz done, that WIT, that's okay for a pinch. That's okay for a sprint. But if your whole year is a sprint, what that leads to is fatigue. That's not sustainable. So the way that you begin to strip things off of people is, what's their greatest brilliance? So the Delegate and Elevate is a way that you can begin to build out people's tasks based upon what their brilliance is. So love and great at this is where we want our people to start. This is where we want our people to live, right? And then from there, like and good at. Like, what else what do they enjoy? Maybe it's not their highest passion, but they like it and they're good at it. What are the things that they dislike but are still good at? That's something nobody wants to live in this zone, but there are some things for all of us. Just like, yeah, I could hand that off, but honestly, I'm just probably the best on the team at it. I don't love it, but I can tolerate it, and I am good at it. This is the kill zone. This is where you want to get your people out of. What do they dislike? and are not good at it. An example would be if you have somebody that's not finance based doing your financial work, that's a bad fit. They're frustrated, they're not good at it, which means they're probably not doing the best job, and it is probably more sloppy. You want somebody that is a high attention to detail personality. If you've got a creative doing your finances, you're going to be super bummed on how that turns out because your numbers aren't going to be clean. We need to know what said person in our gap analyzer is working on things that live in this dislike, not good at. And then this becomes the new thing that you start sourcing work to. As I go back to the gap analyzer, and I'm looking at the team time and I'm allocating time here, and I'm like, this is too much time in operations for Savannah. Let's then push her into delegate and elevate exercise, and let's have her identify for us using the gap where each one of the things that Savannah is doing that and how they fit on this 4 quadrants. And then what's here in the dislike and not good at, let's begin to strip out of her role and ask ourselves, of all these people, other people doing ops, could Julie maybe take on some things from Savannah? She's only using 7 hours in ops. Would it fit in Jesh's role better? Maybe some of these things that Savannah is doing that I could push it over into Jesh's role, freeing Savannah up to then live in her love and great at more frequently and get out of her dislike and not good at. The way that you identify bandwidth is by first taking an inventory of team and then breaking it out with the delegate elevate. So let me show you how that would work. Let's say I come here to Taryn. Taryn, we'll use yours, even though I know these are fiction numbers now because this was done a while ago, a couple of years ago. I'm going to side by side these, and this is what we do every time we go through a gap analyzer with people. The next step after that is, especially people who are overwhelmed with their workspace or their work time or amount of time being allocated to things, we begin to pull up the delegate elevate next. We've collected the information, how they spend their time on the daily, on the weekly, on the monthly. And then we're going to take all of those things and drop them into sections. So we put Taryn's name here, we drop the date, and usually with name, I'll put name and title. That usually just helps me with things. And then love and Greta. So Taryn, as far as marketing tech and courses, emails, contact lists, text issues, apps connecting, sales pages, order forms, integrations, where do you feel like those things fit on this spectrum?
That's a love and great app, sir.
Boy, do you and are you loving and great at it? So I'm going to just drop it straight there. What about finance help, orders, payments, plans, reporting?
I'm going to go ahead and call that a like and good at.
Okay, perfect. What about communications, tasks, email, Slack, Asana? You love this.
I'm going to call that a dislike but good at.
Yeah. And you get it. We're just going to go down the list all the way through his daily, his weekly, his monthly, assigning it to 4 quadrants of the delegate and elevate. And once we start populating the list here of dislike and not good at, that's going to give us a good indication of where we probably need some bandwidth help. If Taryn is pegged, right? Like Taryn right now is pegged. You don't see it on this because this is an older iteration, but Taryn's time, we're maxing bandwidth. We do this thing. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but let me grab it real quick. It's the bandwidth. We collect bandwidth at the Collab team. It's a picture of how all team is using time. And it's something we push out every pay period to tell me how the team is doing bandwidth wise and how much room we have left. So a Collab team right now is traveling at 80% bandwidth. Last week was worse. 86. I think the week before that was even worse. Yeah, 99. Like there are some weeks that we get pegged. Yeah, we don't usually travel that. I like us to travel at less than 80%, so I can always be taking on new work. But you can see here, Savannah's pegged. Taryn's pegged, Stephanie's pegged. They're using up their time. And I want to make sure that Taryn is using up his time living in these 3 quadrants. And if there's anything that's living in here in the dislike and not good at, I want to strip off Taryn because that's how I'm creating bandwidth. Taryn's at the Collab team. Taryn is top of the food chain. Like if Taryn is pegged, that means I can't take on any other clients that are going to need Taryn's time because Taryn doesn't have any more real estate to give. You know, the way that I create time for Taryn is by breaking it down and saying, Taryn, what doesn't have to be you anymore? Right? Like, what is something that can live in this quadrant of dislike and not good at? But this can also be something maybe Taryn does enjoy, but his brilliance is exhausted there. He's already SOP'd the thing out. It doesn't require his brain anymore. It's just taking real estate from his bandwidth. How can I strip that off of Taryn and push that down to a team member that's looking for an opportunity to elevate, right? Like that's the whole idea here is how can we delegate down so that Taryn can elevate up and others can elevate up because things that maybe you dislike and are not good at or maybe things that have been SOP'd out, that's an opportunity for somebody that's lower tier on the food chain to say, hey, I'd like to elevate up into that. Hey, give me that opportunity. Hey, I'm looking for hours. You know, if you look on the bandwidth, like there are people on team that still have hours within their bandwidth. Like we could source some stuff out to some of the folks on the team. What do I source out? Delegate and Elevate tells you that. What can I pull off with Taryn? And Taryn and I will have this conversation all the time. And I'll challenge Taryn. You can ask Taryn. I meet with Taryn every few weeks. And my challenge always to Taryn is, what are you doing that you don't have to be? Yesterday, I kicked Taryn off of an L10 yesterday. I'm like, you don't need to be on those calls anymore. Like that's not best use of your time. Let me give you an hour back in your weekly schedule because you don't have to be on that anymore because Ben and I've got it. There's no reason for Taryn you to be in that call. Savannah, I cut you loose similar from another L10 from a different client because yeah, it's great. Savannah is brilliant. What she has to share is awesome, but is it necessary for this application? I can go back to her with the request that came out of that level 10 meeting. So no, Savannah, let me give you the gift of time back. Let's cut you loose. But the delegate elevate makes that very, very pointed, especially when you've already gone through and taken an assessment of what everybody's doing and dropping it in here. And then if they've missed something between the gap analyzer, you'll catch it on the delegate and elevate. They'll be like, hey, dang it, going through this and thinking about the way you're describing it, this other thing actually takes a lot of my time as well. And then you can capture it here. Taryn, do you have other things you want to share about the delegate and elevate exercise?
Personally, I love the delegate and elevate, and in my experience, so does everybody we send it through. It's something unique people don't see a lot of if they've seen it at all. And it's a good way for them to look at it, to look at their job differently too. And it kind of shows that you're caring about not just that they're just doing a set of tasks over and over again. That's called their job. You're trying to make sure they're staying in a lane that provides value to them doing their job. Yep. And if you start seeing more in the dislike, not good at, or even the dislike and good at, you can realize, okay, maybe we need to find a different seat for you. Like, we love you at the company, you're a great worker, but we've suddenly realized we made you in charge of events on accident and you hate events.
Yeah.
You're great at other things, but and we didn't even realize we made you in charge of events until we took you through this.
That's right.
So then it's a cool way to shift team around and be like, oh, that's our bad. Like, you've been doing these tasks awesomely, but we don't want that to be your job if you don't like it. So Aaron, my question though to you is, do you prefer to have people walk through this, or do you ever send it off to people just to fill in on their own?
Yeah, I think it depends. If they've gone through, typically like a normal engagement with the gap analyzer, I'll push gap analyzer results back to the CEO and usually their COO or whoever their director of ops is for them to pull through it together. And then usually it leads into next level conversations, right? Because let's say we sold the gap analyzer as a project block. We took them all the way through it. Hey, here's your results. Usually I'll always recommend where a Collab team can help cut the gap. Hey, I've got somebody that's really good at that. Why don't you just let me sub somebody onto your team to be able to carry that load? And usually that turns into a high level retainer conversation. We have high level retainers that we carry with, some really powerful brands out there. Usually it'll turn into that where it's like, okay, so we have the gap analyzer results. This is what Collab team could fulfill, but let's go through a delegate and elevate to make sure we're really clear on what could be peeled off in each one of those roles. And it'll be the next level conversation after the gap analyzer. But let's say it's an existing client we're working with, Taryn, where like they've already gone through the gap, they've already done some of this early lift. And now it's just an issue of, like, a good example would be, I think we just put Kimberly back through this. Kimberly is the director of ops over at Stephen Diaz's and Chelsea Diaz's Rainmaker Academy, which is amazing. If you're looking for something, a side hustle in Amazon to do while baby is napping, like, I think that's their niche. Or if you're a powerful business lady that's out there and you're like, hey, could I do something that I don't have to be away from my family so long? They've got a great thing going on over there. But Kimberly's the director of ops. We just put Kimberly through the delegate elevate, even though they've done the gap before, but this was an opportunity for us to say, she's traveling at max bandwidth. What should we strip out of her role to then pass on to somebody else? So I think you're right, Taryn. It doesn't always have to be something that comes directly out of the gap into the delegate elevate, or something even I necessarily need to nurture somebody through. I will say, usually having some sort of interview with somebody after they fill it out is really helpful because I can challenge things. Kimberly can say, hey, this lives in like and good at, and I can be like, but do you? Because you and I have had conversations and I think you're just a really nice human being and you're willing to tolerate that, but that's not your highest brilliance, right? And haven't you SOP'd that out? Why are you still doing that? Like, let's pull that off of you. So I think that's a good point too. So that's the delegate and elevate. And then the beauty of doing something like this is What I found, and I mean, maybe this is a unicorn. I don't think it is though, because almost every organization we've worked with has this pain point. Either they don't have job descriptions formally that they've rolled out with their people, or the job descriptions they have don't really speak to what the person does anymore. Like it's either they don't have them at all, or it's that they need some refining. So the beauty of taking somebody through a gap analyzer into a delegate and elevate is now you've got everything that really should be in their job description, right? Like you've got everything that really should be identified and what are we paying this person for, right? The visionary can be like, what do we pay? We pay that person so much money. What are they actually doing? Oh, let me tell you what they're doing. Let me give you actually the exact breakdown in percentages of how they're using their time. Hey, but don't worry, Mr. Visionary. We've also taken them through a delegate and elevate because we want to make sure we're getting best bang for our buck, right? Isn't that what you want, Miss Visionary? Like that, you want to make sure your money's going the most efficient. Let's make sure we're spending what I only want Taryn working on this kinds of thing. Awesome. Well, we took them through the delegate and elevate. We've identified these are the things, and that actually has led to their job description. The beauty of going first through the gap, then the delegate elevate is now you have all of the meat to put on the bones of the job description. You're able to go through here and lay out what does this entail, what's the compensation, what's the company mission, what is your team doing, like this is the position summary. Take it on down to you're collaborating with these are the key responsibilities, these are the key performance indicators, and then these are the key competencies and qualifications. All of this data comes out of our delegate and elevate that came out of our gap. So it makes building your job descriptions so succinct and beautiful because you're not just guessing, right? A lot of people, I feel like they just pull down some job description off of Google and they're just like, hey, this is what a director of ops is supposed to be doing, I guess, because Google said it. And I pulled it off this really reputable site, probably just the one you got it for free, right? So I pulled it down off of there and this is what you're supposed to be doing. Doesn't translate to your industry, doesn't speak to what you're doing as a job. How does this translate into the online entrepreneur world, the info product world? It doesn't. And then what do you experience? Frustration. Why? Because person in operations in this position is trying to live to the core of their job description. That's how ops people are wired. They're wanting to know their scope of work so they can fulfill it well. And then visionary starts lobbing things over the wall, right? Like into the court. And it's like, well, how does that line up with my scope of work? How does that line up with my job description? And then operations person is overwhelmed because they're operating outside of what their job description, their scope was supposed to be, because they become a collector of a bunch of things. Usually operations people want to make visionary happy, right? They're a doer. They want it until they hit the ceiling and then they're pissed, right? And then there becomes that frustration of, why don't they understand what I'm doing? Visionary doesn't understand what they're doing. So they don't understand, they continue to dump. This person here hasn't been verbal until they're probably pushing their limits. And then it becomes explosive and painful, and operations person exits and visionary feels all the pain of losing this high value asset, when all of that could really easily be dissected and de-escalated by pushing through a conversation about time, either the gap analysis sheet or the gap analyzer tool. Do a follow-up interview and talk about delegate and elevate. What do they want to be doing? Maybe you've been trying to jam a square peg in a circle hole for the last year, and both of you are frustrated because that's not the way they were created, and you're trying to force something that's not going to work. You can use a screwdriver to pound nails all day long, but that's not what the tool was created for, right? So you're going to be frustrated because efficiency is bad. They're going to be frustrated because that's not what they were designed to do. So the way you get to that is delegate and elevate. What do you love? What do you not love? And then let's make that part of your job description. And then from there, and I'm not going to take us into that today, from there into 555, like quarterly evaluations. Let's keep a pulse. Let's keep a pulse on how you're feeling. What's working, what's not working. Are you living up to what your 5 key rules are going to be? I guess I was going to show org chart, but in your org chart, and maybe we'll save that for the end if I've got time. Ultimately, your 5 EOS is really big on 5 key rules. What are the 5 key things that should be contained in your position? And that's the conversation we're having in your quarterly eval. How are you living up to your 5 key rules? How are you living up to your 5 main rocks? What's working? What's not working? And how can we make it better? And that gives them an opportunity to get stuff off their chest, and you to give an opportunity of, hey, this isn't working for me as a leader over you. I need to see you change in these areas. It gives me a coaching opportunity in a very metric and clean way. That's not just like, you're not doing your job. Well, half the things you say on my job aren't even on my job description, and now you're pissed and I'm pissed, and it's just a bad work environment. What do you guys have to say to those things?
Well, I think one thing I like to remind people of is this isn't an intentional, you don't reach this point from an intentional point of view where your visionary is forcing you to do things you don't like. I mean, we see this with every client we've picked up. They've got 2-3 key players that have been with them since the beginning. Person C happened to be the one with the most bandwidth, suddenly became in charge of events. 6 months later down the road, you're doing a lot of events, you're hiring people. You find out they just hate events. And so now you need to hire somebody with events and give them back the role that they want to be doing. Maybe they love being a customer service manager, but it's not something that they're scheming for behind your back, that like, I'm just going to give you all the things you hate doing. It's just the natural, it's the unfortunate organic evolution of that business, that small business, that entrepreneur that just, they have an idea and then all of a sudden it goes straight up and everybody's holding on. So I think what's fun about what Aaron showed you is we're just trying to get you back to a point where, you can get back in the seat and put your seatbelt on instead of holding on to the sides, feeling like you're going to fall off at any point.
Yeah, that's super good, T. I think too, breaking it down to realizing we're all just people, right? And unless your visionary isn't some malicious person trying to make your life awful, like they wake up on fire. That's how they wake up. They wake up with lots of ideas, and so how can I help them triage through it? And EOS really advocates for an integrator visionary meeting that happens once a week, that they can take the download, and then like find out where those pieces fit. Is that a this quarter rock or a next quarter rock? Is that a right now thing or is that down the stream thing? Because if you can start having some good communication and understand the frameworks of how we're each wired, that's what really helps us move forward. But I think that's really good, T, of like, let's de-vilify people. Like no one's the villain unless you work for a villain. And if you work for a villain, get out. Like don't stick around, you know what I mean? But most business environments they're not a villain. It's just you're like organized differently. You're wired differently. So it's easy to get frustrated with each other. Savannah, jump in before Amelia, we lose Amelia.
I think I lost my window, but kind of like what Taryn said. And really, like, I feel like operations people in startups are actually just as guilty as the visionary for letting this become a thing, because we're solutions oriented, right? Like we want to find the solution to the problem. And if there's a team of 3 people and all of a sudden they find success and there's a hole to be filled, operations is going to be like, hey, I know how to fix that. Like, it's not something that I like to do, but I know how to fix that. And I'm the person on the team who's going to fix that. And so it's not just the visionary being like, and you get a job and you get a job and you get a job. It's also the operations minded person on the team that's like, here's a problem. Here's how we fix this problem. We don't have team to fill it. So I'm going to fill it. And then it kind of shoots off from there. But
yeah, I think that's so good, Savannah. Just the realization that right, operations people can be, if we're not careful, enablers, right? And we don't say no enough, or when we start saying no, we start saying it wrong sometimes, right? And visionary doesn't want to hear no. So how can I package that a little bit better, right? And I would say the way I package that better is, hey, let me take that back to team. Let me see how we can work that out. And then you go back to team and team's like, hell no, we can't do that right now. What is he nuts? What is she nuts? And we'll be like, hey, no, let's break it down a little bit. How can we do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 on this? That's what we talk about a lot for our L10 meetings on rocks, is a lot of the big rocks, right? Our rocks should be our quarterly things that we're moving towards our annual goal, right? So each one of those things are going to be assigned out to keep people on the team. And then how can we make this quarter's rock at least a phase 1 direction towards what the visionary wants to see? And then realizing this may take more than a quarter, or maybe you'll accelerate it and go faster than you think it would. But I think helping visionaries to see, Taryn, you always say this, when everything's important, nothing is, right? Because when everything is getting that same volume level, it's like turned down for what? Like everything is like so loud. You're just like, what is the priority? Because when I talked to you yesterday, you said this thing was the priority, but now you're telling me this thing is the priority. And visionaries can give their team whiplash of like shifting gears so fast that people are just like, all of us have been in cars with people that are learning how to drive a stick, right? And it's like the jerky experience of the person is jerking us in and out of gears that it doesn't make sense. And so you're slowing way down, speeding way up, and it's just a jerky ride. How can we take the jerkiness out of the ride? And the way that we can do it is making sure we have the right players, right, who understand their roles, so that when visionary drops this new thing, you're like, Oh, I know exactly where to go with that. I need to go to Jesh for creatives, and I need to go to Savannah to make sure customer experience is set up the right way. I need to go to Taryn to make sure the tech's all built out. And I need to go to Ben to help make sure the operations flow is going to work the right way with workflows. And each one of the people on your team begins to work and run in their lane so that you're able to come up with something relatively quickly that used to be really painful because you used to be the choking point, right? Like that's the thing we're trying to get away from is how can we take the main operations person out of the place of being choking point by empowering other people with roles that make sense that they're excellent at. And that's the key with building teams is what we found is most times we as ops people have enabled visionary to think we can do everything because we probably could, right? We probably can do most of it. But let me tell you what, I started as being the guy that did all the tech until I brought on Taryn. And let me tell you what, Taryn has lifted the roof monumentally beyond anything I was doing in tech because tech isn't my highest brilliance, but it is Taryn's, and I used to manage all of the customer experience stuff until Savannah came on the scene. And now Savannah is so much better than I am at managing the customer experience side of things, the customer journey, the way that we're handling clients, the way we're thinking through how our team is being communicated, how we're triaging tickets and pain points and volume. Savannah is so much better than me when I realized that's her brilliance. That's what she's great at. Let's let her play to her brilliance and let's strip off of Savannah. And I challenge Savannah with this all the time. Like, does that have to be you though? Or could we give somebody else on the team an opportunity to elevate by you delegating it down to them? And then they come back to you as the source of knowledge. You can still be the knowledge base, but how can we make the lift on somebody else that's looking for opportunity that maybe has some space in their bandwidth in a way that you're pegged? Let's offload and give you back the gift of time. But until you start having the conversations around time and how people are using their time, you miss it. So we're going to go deep into this in VIP. So if you would like to deep dive with us in VIP, if you want to bring to us your pain points, we would love to help you with that. If you'd like the Delegate and Elevate tool, I would love to give you that for free. That's no big deal. So if you want that tool for free, if you just want to drop in the chat, whether you're watching in Facebook, you're watching on YouTube, wherever you're watching, drop into the comments that you would like the Delegate and Elevate tool and just give us your email address and I'll make sure I send that straight away out to you. Other than that, we would love for you to jump into VIP. I think Ben's probably dropping the link down here, but I think that the link is Foundations That Scale /foundations-upgrade, I think is what it is. I'm going to share the screen just so you can see that. But if you were to go to this URL, Foundations That Scale /Foundations-Upgrade, /Foundations-Upgrade, it's going to give you access, get your questions answered, gives you some time with us one-on-one, and then we'll give you as a VIP bonus the Gap Analyzer app. We would love to do that for you. We'd love to do that with you. We're going to come back together at 1 p.m. today Pacific time for VIP. So take advantage of that. Click the link that is in Facebook or wherever you're watching right now, or go to that URL, take advantage of that. And we're going to tune back in together at 1 p.m. today. Taryn, Savannah, thank you so much for joining me today. And we'll see you guys back around at 1 p.m.
Bye, everybody.